initiated!
To thousands of fans, it's must-see television. But this exhibition allows you to get up close and personal with all those props, costumes and monsters, if you dare.
It's like being in the studio. It's, as I say, as near as you can get to actually walking on set. And these are the items that David's touched and some of the costumes that the actors have physically worn. So there's an amazing cachet there just in the physical props themselves.
The show will be updated during its 9-month run with new items from forthcoming episodes. And for those who wonder what a big commercial exhibition is doing in a city museum, the council has this answer.
Doctor Who is splendid, and it's also a splendid educational tool, teaching children about stories, teaching children about the future, talking about big ideas. And if Victorian built museums were built for anything, they were built for entertainment and education. This says it all, entertainment plus and education too.
So we asked 8-year-old Ewan Macaulay and his mum and dad to take their own trip through time and space and tell us what they thought.
My favourite was the Emperor Dalek.
Don't tell me that a rift
A small model, and the other one was the Dalek elevator.
I've seen a private exhibition a couple of years ago in Paisley, which was very good, but this, like I say, this was interactive. There was lots of things to do, keep you interested, and press the wrong button and something strange will happen. It's good, very good.
The hands-on aspect to it as well, the fact that you get to even touch the Auton's face and that kind of thing, I think it's great.
Some younger viewers might find it all a bit too hands-on, although a couple of Cybermen proved no match for this group of Glasgow school children.
Now Eve, with western shadows long, floated on Catrin bright and strong, when Roderick, with a chosen few, repassed the heights of Benvenue.
The Lady of the Lake, reproduced this year 200 years on, an epic poem which brought fame and visitors to Loch Catrin and the Trossachs, and like so much of Scott's output, inspired others, including Rossini and Schubert, gave America Hail to the Chief, and according to some, the Ku Klux Klan, the Burning Cross. It's impossible to overstate the impact of Walter Scott on the world, and consequently the way the world sees Scotland.
What's this here, Stuart?
Well, this is the original Abbotsford. This is the bit that Scott himself designed and loved. The wing here is a later addition. It's built by his granddaughter, Charlotte Hope Scott, and has a Catholic chapel as part of it. This part is where Scott, this is what Scott made himself, and you can see things like the old Tolbooth Door prison. You can see various bits of sort of famous Scottish castles built into the fabric of the building.
The home he built by the Tweed is to be restored and a visitor centre installed. It's always been a place for hospitality. Wordsworth, Byron, Coleridge, Raeburn. 10 years after his death, 80,000 were turning up every year, and many today are from other countries.
This house, I mean, what does, it's a very unique, obviously a unique place. What does it tell us about or does it in any way reflect on the works, the literary works of Scott?
It absolutely does. I mean, Abbotsford, Scott himself described it as his romance in stone and lime. He saw Abbotsford as being the architectural equivalent of what he was doing in fiction with the novels. Like the novels, it's kind of precariously balanced between a kind of romantic version of the past and a pragmatic version of the present. So even though you can see all the parts which are based on Rosslyn Chapel, all the kind of nods and winks to Scotland's architectural heritage, this was the first house in Scotland with gas lighting. It was the first house in Scotland with flushing toilets. It was, you know, a technological marvel wrapped up.
We're sitting on the fridge.
And we're sitting on the fridge. This was the ice house and the kind of pantry and larder of it. So, you know, this is basically the fridge of the house. Technologically incredibly sophisticated, and at the same time achingly romantic and nostalgic, and that's what we get from his books as well.
I was going to say, but that's exactly how people, a modern audience, would view his books. I mean, they are achingly romantic and achingly difficult to read. Now, you know, just as the house is kind of its time and is kind of old-fashioned, if you like, aren't the works also?
I don't think because Scott is difficult that we have to somehow write him out of our history. Proust is difficult, Joyce is difficult, and look at the way in which Dublin has used Joyce as a huge way to brand itself, identify itself, and make it a cultural capital.
As with Scott, so with Stevenson, Buchan and numerous others, a library of stirring storytellers who have illuminated the minds of millions. Do we as a people embrace the tradition? Or do we miss the opportunity that Sir Walter, with his 19th century PR skills, certainly wouldn't, to sell them and Scotland as a world centre of literary tourism?
I think the thing with Scott, we certainly don't promote him year-round. Every now and again there'll be a spike of interest round about an anniversary, round about some kind of, well, like the homecoming last year with Burns. But we don't actively say that Scotland has this great tradition. It's slightly bizarre to me. I can never quite understand why this is. Scotland is known internationally for its literature. It's not known for its opera. It's not known for its sculpture. It's not known for its painting. It's not known for its ballet. Literature is the one thing that Scotland is identified with worldwide, and it's the part which gets least amount of funding, both from Creative Scotland and in terms of Visit Scotland and how they conceptualise how you sell Scotland abroad.
Scott regularly made the journey from Abbotsford to nearby Selkirk, where he was the sheriff, remembered as a Georgian celebrity more than as an author. He had his own solution to the critics who said he was verbose. The courtroom, now a museum.
Scott himself, I think it's in Red Gauntlet, he talks about the laudable practice of skipping. So that if you're bored by a long description, jump over it, skip it, and get on with the story. And the story actually is very good. And Scott, the curious thing is, people think of him as being long-winded and slow, but actually the novels move pretty fast. He wrote fast, and you should read him fast. And if that means that you just let your eye flick over one paragraph, fine, get on with it. Now, Scott is not taught, because he is, for schools I suppose in some ways demanding, but there is a way around that. I think I would like to see teachers of English taking one of the great Scottish novels, which are the ones set from the late 17th century up to his own day, and going through it with a class, skipping, cutting out the bits that are too slow nowadays, and concentrating on what is the heart of the matter, which is still, I think, relevant and still interesting and exciting. I mean, you know, Scott's heroes are often people caught between two worlds. Waverley, the first one, you know, is he a Jacobite? Is he a Hanoverian? And these are the sort of questions which are still relevant to today.
You're a thief, a murderer, and a violator of women.
We do remember Scott, sometimes without realising he was the author. Some writers sneer today at his politics and his output, but he outsold them all, and across the centuries has left his stamp on today's world. Is it a legacy from which Scotland should more fully benefit, educationally and in tourism?
The Kelvin Hall ferry was one of many which would have crossed the Clyde in the 1950s, taking workers across to the shipyards.
It was a hive of industry, shipping passing up and down here all the time. Tugs, dredgers, digging up the soil from the bottom of the river. There are 12 hopper barges to take the spoil down for dumping at the tail of the bank.
And then there was the holiday traffic, the famous trips down the water for thousands of city dwellers. These scenes made all the more poignant by the fact they were filmed just 2 years before the First World War.
We've got hundreds and hundreds of films related to the Clyde because it is such an amazing and important part of Glasgow's history. And we've got all kinds of films dating way back to 1912 with the pleasure cruises, right up to the shipyards.
Frigates and destroyers, carriers and submarines. Tugs, the power packs of shipping. Ferries for people, ferries for cars.
Indeed, this film even won one of Scotland's earliest Oscars. But it's more modest films the organisers of this exhibition hope they'll find before opening in June. And it doesn't have to be vintage footage either.
We're asking people with any stories about the Clyde, from holidays to Dunoon and Rothesay or tales from the shipyards, or even a blog about one of the recent developments along the Clyde today, to get in touch with us about memories and stories that they have.
As for ferry number 8, despite being written off twice, it's still afloat, and volunteers hope to have her back out on the river on the next bank holiday weekend. Pauline McLean, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.